Welcome back to Nayahso. If you're a returning family member, welcome back. We have another exciting episode for you. If you're new, consider subscribing, join the family. Today, we're going to talk about the humble cassava. Humble because it is one in a million things, and it just looks like that brown, beautiful kind of a textured outer appearance, but it is fantastic, the humble cassava. First thing we can do with the humble cassava is make what is largely eaten, made in West Africa. It's fufu. I love fufu. So you get your cassava, you boil your cassava, you pound your cassava. You may need to do other things, so check with the fufu experts. There are plenty online on YouTube. Eventually ends up being this rounded ball of delicious, sticky, and the texture just dissolves in your mouth, really. So that's one thing you can do with cassava. The next thing you can do with cassava, you can make gari. Gari, again, this is common throughout West Africa, and I'm not sure about other parts of the continent, but I'm learning that we all do similar things. So to make gari is you peel, you grate the cassava, you ferment it, and then you either fry it or roast it to make it edible, and then you can put it out to dry. You just have to add hot water. It is almost like those instant food. You add hot water to go, let it sit for a while, it becomes soft. You can add sugar and milk to make like a gari porridge, or you can use it and eat it with a sauce in place of your carbohydrates like your rice or even your fufu. So gari is super versatile, and it's a dehydrated food, a dried food, so it can store and you can use it for a long period of time. So if you're in a place where you feel there might be with food shortage, they're saying, because of the supply chain and there's war and there's all kinds of things going on, get yourself a bag of gari, because that's instant carbohydrates and you just have to add hot water. It is fantastic. Next thing you can do with cassava is tapioca. So it is gluten-free. So you get the cassava, you chop up big chunks, you blend, you strain, you sieve. Now, what do you use tapioca flour for? Like a ton of things. It's an alternative to wheat flour. It is gluten-free. So all those gluten allergies and all of that, you can use tapioca flour. And it is huge business industry, because a lot of the wheat that is eaten has been genetically modified. They have gone and done things to the plants so that the wheat plant is resistant to, I don't know, pesticide, it's resistant to this and it's resistant to that, and it grows for longer and it grows bigger. And so they've gone in and they've genetically changed the wheat that God made into something else. And then what happens over a period of time, when human beings keep eating this genetically now tougher wheat that is resistant to all these things, then people themselves, their bodies start to struggle to digest it. And also maybe because they're hidden wheat products in so many things, but we struggle to digest it and people have wheat allergies. So tapioca comes in as a really natural, organic alternative to wheat. So if you can make tapioca or any of these things, these are things that you can make and you can sell, because you can package the flour and you can sell, either starting locally and also considering as you get bigger to go overseas to sell to places where they don't naturally have cassava, but they would love to have a gluten-free flour. One of the things that has actually popped up in the last couple of years or so is this boba tea. It's a drink where it is a sweetish drink, but the thing about it is it's got these bubbles in it that look almost like the size of tiny marbles, but they're edible. And in the research, I learned that the boba from the boba tea, those bubbles, are made from tapioca. The other thing we have with this humble cassava is you can make cassava flour, where you wash, cut the cassava, you dry it and you ground it into flour. And that's cassava flour. And again, you can make a whole range of things with cassava flour, including eating it. The next thing that you can do with the humble cassava is cassava leaves. So now that is one of my favorite foods, and it is primarily in West Africa. I don't know if other parts of the continent cook it or elsewhere, but you pick the cassava leaves, you soak the leaves, you boil it, and then you chop it as a vegetables to use in stew. And it is absolutely delicious, delicious. You can collect cassava leaves and you can dry them. And when you dry the cassava leaves, you can package and you can sell, because now it has a longer shelf life. So you can sell your cassava leaves locally and internationally. In the US, and not just the US, but this was a US thing, and it was sad as well, because they talked about these areas called food deserts, and I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but they are food deserts. And what they've done is, in areas that have African American communities, not all, but in some areas, in some parts, the shops that are there did not have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. Most of the things that were being sold were canned food or processed food, which is not healthy. So you think of people living in a community where you go to your local shop and you're getting canned or processed food, then nutritionally you're at a disadvantage and your body's at a disadvantage. And ever since I saw that, it just broke my heart, because I'm thinking, wow, really? It's like more, it's like, it just feels unending how much our people have suffered. And it's really just breaking my heart. But one of the things that can be done, which is an opportunity, is any dehydrated food that we can grow or prepare in the continent, we mustn't forget there may be a ready base of customers in the diaspora throughout the US, which is one of the largest diaspora of Africans. And I don't know if people think about that enough. The US contains one of the largest diaspora of Africans, African Americans. They're originally all Africans. I have my ancestors were also taken as slaves, but they returned back to Sierra Leone. So perhaps I can see more clearly how we're all one and the same people, whereas we're just the same people. And to think that our people in the diaspora may live in a place where they call a food desert, really, and they don't have access to organic and nutritious food. So anyone, all of you intelligent young people with access to cassava or any of those other leaves, and we'll go through various things in detail to show what you can do with them. But dry your cassava leaves and you can package them and you can sell them. And I know you're intelligent enough to kind of figure out, and you can look it up, how to export food, dried food to the US, or look up food desert areas in the US and see where they are, and look up supermarkets. And nowadays they have some directory of Black-owned supermarkets, and they may be more in the areas, or they may know of the areas, or they may even just be interested to connect with the continent and the food grown there. So while we think we can't find a job, we can make jobs, and we can grow things, and we can dehydrate them, and we can package them, and we can share with our brothers and sisters in places where they don't have access to organic food. Can you imagine? Suddenly they can go to the supermarkets and they have cassava leaves that your company now exports to the US. And can you imagine how much money you're going to make? So now, and then with that could come where you could do additional things where you can put up recipes. I know people are showing how to cook cassava leaves, because this may be new for a lot of people. So you can get cassava leaves. So I did go on from there. So I'll pause on the cassava leaves because it's just exciting, and the opportunities are endless. They're endless. Don't leave money on the table. People need food, and people need organic food. The next thing I did find, and this is now seems like a theme, is cassava beer. I am telling you, people would ferment anything. It's cassava beer or cassava wine. So this is how they said it's done. And for those who are in the brew industry, there are varieties of things that you could brew that are locally grown. So sliced cassava remove the skin and remove the pink skin as well, and cut it into bits, boil for about 15 minutes until it's cooked, check that it's actually cooked. And then you need a yeast. And the one I saw, the lady was using like ground yeast boiled into powder. So you put when the cassava is cooled down, get a bowl or container with a lid and put some banana leaves first, and then put the boiled cassava on the banana leaves, the cool one, and take the yeast and sprinkle it around the cassava, the boiled cassava, and then cover the banana leaves, like fold it, cover it, put the lid on it, on the container, and put it in a place for about 3 days in a dark, sort of cool place. And after 3 days, take it out, put it in a bowl, put the cassava in a bowl, mash the cassava, add some water, stir it in, and you might be best to do it in a blender. From what I was seeing, it's just like gets that cassava and the water more mixed, not into puree, but just mixed together really well. And once it's done, then strain it through a sieve or a cheesecloth, strain it. And that liquid that's strained out is a cassava wine. But that's cassava beer, and it would be like locally grown, locally made thing. The next thing you can do with cassava, which also is mind-blowing, plastic bags are an issue everywhere. Shopping bags, you go shopping, you get a bag, and often we discard the bag, and it's made from plastics, which is toxic, which doesn't biodegrade so quickly. The process to make it might be more taxing on the environment, and then the process for its destruction is even more taxing. So you can make cassava bags. So the cassava starch, you can use the cassava starch and you can add coconut oil, and that bag becomes biodegradable and it's organic. So you can look up how to make bags out of cassava starch, and you can experiment. All those chemists, all those entrepreneurs, anything that you studied, it is summer. We've been interviewing a number of students who says, oh, we don't have work. Oh, we're going home to hang out with the family, which is great. But while you're home, in your village, in your town, in your city, wherever you are, figure out one of these things that we're putting out on the site that you could do. Just figure it out and say, hey, I'm going to try this. Imagine if you can make your cassava bag with your brand name on it. They can all come to you, your brand. You know how much money you'd make? You'd be so rich. They'll be singing for you in your village, in your town, in your city. Then I came across this other gentleman, I think he was from Uganda, and he was making bags from cassava peel. And I thought, wow, now I've seen it all. Plastic looking thing. I don't want to say the wrong technical name. I think it's polyurethane or something like that. But anyway, he made it from cassava peel. So therefore, experiment, look it up again, how to make bags from cassava peel, look up how to make bag from cassava starch. I saw this guy in Brazil, and he made a thermal cup from cassava, and then start experimenting with the various levels of cassava, what you need to do with it, what you need to add to it. And it has your brand on it. Please, you'll be so rich, they'll be dancing for you in your village all day, all night. Everybody will be singing and dancing for you. Cassava plates. The next thing you can do with cassava, you can make cassava chips. Now, these are fairly straightforward. You peel the cassava, slice thinly, you season it, and you fry it, and you get your cassava chips. And they're crunchy, they're super crunchy. They make your gums on your teeth work, but they're delicious. One other thing you can do with cassava is commercial sugar. Now this is interesting, because when they say commercial sugar, so we know it's not sugar that you would make at home. So it's not sugar that you add in like granulated sugar. This is commercial sugar. So this sugar I'd heard of before, and I didn't really understand it. When you hear of high fructose syrup, so in a lot of things that they make, they use, I think it's cornstarch nowadays to make high fructose syrup. So, and they use high fructose syrup in a lot of food making things. You can just read the package. They make high fructose syrup is in demand. Well, you can make that from cassava. That's right. You can make it from cassava. You put the flour in water, mix to 150 degrees, leave the mixture for 2 hours. Then there's some enzymes that converts the starch to sugar, and you have your high fructose syrup. That's right. And for all those chemists and biologists there, look into the recipe, find out exactly what proportions you need, but it is possible, and high fructose syrup is in high demand. And I don't think necessarily humans should consume a lot, because anything that's syrup or sugar, we need to moderate how much we personally eat. But for places where they have a factory base and they're making all kinds of things, then they may need that quantity of high fructose syrup for their produce. Cassava glue, that's kind of easy to figure out. So you put the water in a pan, bring to boil, add your tapioca starch, and then you stir and stir and stir until it's smooth texture. You can make paints using dyed cassava starch as the pigment. That's right, it said so. So all of those who are into, if you're interested in construction, because one of the things that we know we need on the continent is more housing. We need more housing. We need more proper structured housing. And when the houses are done, actually, one of the things I've noticed, whenever you're watching a movie or just, you know, in general, you're doing one of those seen houses in the continent or the streets, they need paint. It just looks like there's a lot of paint that needs to be done. And I know things are expensive, but if you could be that company that's making local paints and using dyed cassava starch as a pigment, you could be helping your community by being a paint producer. And you can go one step further. After you made your paints, you can even hire people to paint. So suddenly you can transform your village, your town, your city, your country, your nation, the continent with your paints. Next thing you can use cassava for is to make paper. Cassava paper. So cassava peel, apart from making bags, which is one way, the cassava peel is an alternative fiber to use for pulp in paper making. Animal feed. I was watching some, I think it was, again, I'm trying to think, I think it might have been Wademaya's video, interviewed a guy in Ghana who'd set up a farm, and he was saying one of the things he was raising, I think it might have been sheep. Anyway, he was saying one of the things that they have to do is animal feed. That's expensive, animal feed. But cassava can be used as a substitute in animal feed. Using cassava, that could potentially cut the cost of whatever it is that may be imported to feed the animals, because especially now you know what's going into it. The next one is cassava noodles. I've noticed in some few African movies recently, people have been like saying, you know, when they want to depict someone being lazy, they just say, oh, they just have noodles. Or I think when they want to depict someone being modernized, perhaps, they depict them having noodles. And I'm thinking, really? Noodles? Where are they made? Does that mean now we're importing noodles and we're promoting the importation of more things to the continent? But I get it. It's fast and it's easy. And we all like fast and easy. So when I saw this next one, I thought, we have arrived. Because now look, we can make noodles from cassava starch. So once you get the cassava starch, cassava from the pounded cassava, or whichever one you want to use, tapioca or whatever, we can use to make noodles. And again, these are just ideas. You are going to experiment. Whichever one of these takes your fancy, seems of interest, try and make cassava noodles. Look up how to make noodles. Get your cassava starch and see if you can make noodles. And if you can make noodles, can you imagine? No, really, can you imagine? Instead of importing noodles from China or wherever they're imported from, it will be your brand. And everyone will be importing noodles from you because they're light, they're fast, they're quick. And it is an idea, but I don't see why we cannot make it into something that's, you know, Africanized. And to be organic, it'd be healthy, and it'd be gluten-free. So again, try making cassava noodles. I hope someone does. I really do, because I think that's a huge money maker. Next thing is cassava starch is used in the textile industry. So when they are doing printmaking and dyeing and pigment dyes, they use, you can use cassava starch in it. So research how you can make cassava starch for the textile industry, and it might be a different grade of cassava starch from what we may cook to eat, but look into it, and perhaps you can have that company that's now in the fashion industry, and you can actually start experimenting with local fabrics that we may have, like things made of cotton, etc., right? And you can become the pigment dye person for the fashion industry, your brand, your name on it. Next thing with cassava use is that it's also used in the pharmaceutical industry. And I think it may tie back to that fructose corn syrup thing, but they may use it in cough syrup. They use it in making tablets. I think because it's the nature of it being gluten-free and not having a specifically strong taste, that you might be able to use it to make medicine, to mix it into, to add the medicine in, and etc. So again, the research that if you are a pharmacist or you are interested in medicine, natural medicines, natural remedies, we could be making more of our medicines on the continent right there. We do not have to import things that we can't even read what's on the label because we can't read the lettering, or we don't speak the language. When we have cassava and we have all those roots, nutritious medicine. So it might be a way of boiling, because now I know the boil, I remember, you have a tummy ache, they bring some bag of root things, so you can boil it, you think, oh really? But you can boil it, and you potentially can bottle it. We'll get to those later, but imagine you can boil it and you can extract the core ingredients. The chemist would have to help me out here, I'm not a chemist. And you can mix it with the cassava, whatever, to make the tablets, you know? So therefore, look into it, you chemists, you pharmacists, you people that just do wonderful things and keep us all healthy. And lastly, cassava starch can be used in making soap detergent. That is right. So again, we have some homework. Look up how to make cassava, how to make soap detergent using cassava starch, and experiment over the next few weeks of the summer, if you have summers off, or if you're working on the side. So I counted 18 things that you can do with cassava, and I'll put those up so we can see. But please, the Humble Cassava, I am hoping someone's going to try it and then come back and share and let us know how you got on. So thank you for this cassava session with Nayahso, and we will come back with some other things that we can do with all the things on the continent. Okay, take care. God bless.